You seem to be controlled by your craving for commitment. This is something I've learned to be less attached to. God has laid it on my heart to do this wonderful new mission. Yes, I know it means uprooting our entire family and putting us in a financially precarious situation, but you don't want to be in disobedience to God. I don't think that friend is good for your spiritual growth. Perhaps you might want to consider spending less time with her. Your emotions are completely out of control. I thought you practiced mindfulness. Do any of these sound familiar to you? If so, you may have experienced spiritual abuse. And in this video, I'm going to delve deep into how spiritual practices can be used in subtle and not so subtle ways to cause real harm. But I'm not just going to be talking about the problem, I'm also going to be suggesting some practical strategies that you can start to implement right from today that will help you navigate these difficult situations and protect yourself, including your spiritual well-being. Have you ever heard of the term spiritual bypassing? It was introduced by psychotherapist John Welwood to describe how people can use spirituality as a way to avoid dealing with their own psychological issues, conflicts, and life's challenges. It's like taking old vulnerabilities, fears, insecurities, and harmful coping mechanisms and repackaging them into a form of spirituality. There are many ways that this can manifest, and I'll give a few examples. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list, so I'd love to hear your experiences with spiritual bypassing in the comments section. One form of spiritual bypassing is disguising avoidance as spirituality. Imagine someone is fearful of closeness and intimacy in their relationships. They fear being rejected or seen as a failure if they get too close to someone. And their way of coping is to keep people at a distance and never really get close to anyone. Now, most of us would recognize this as a less than helpful coping strategy, but what if it was repackaged as spirituality? What if they said they were focusing on God or on their spiritual life rather than on earthly relationships? What if they engaged in long periods of prayer and meditation in order to reduce their social connections and closeness with other people? If someone close to them expresses emotional upset or distress, they may respond with an aloof offer of thoughts and prayers. Or if their partner asks them for more commitment, they may suggest that their partner practices mindful non-attachment. The effect on the person is that they continue to fear rejection and intimacy, and they miss out on the joy of close relationships. And if you are close to someone who's behaving in this way, you will likely feel pushed away, distanced, unloved, and uncared for. Over time, you're almost certainly going to get irritated and frustrated and express that. And when you do, they may respond with criticism, seeing your emotionality as a sign of spiritual weakness. And this brings me on to a second form of spiritual bypassing, criticism as spiritual discipline. If someone is very harsh, critical, and demanding of themselves, they may turn spirituality into a weapon with which to beat themselves up. They may be intolerant of their own needs, their own weaknesses, or even their own painful emotions. They may see these as spiritual weakness or moral failing and judge themselves harshly for any mistake they make. This person may have a harsh and punitive relationship with themselves. And unfortunately, for some people, their internal criticism can also extend to other people, especially to those close to them. If you are going through something painful, they may dismiss your pain as a failure in your spiritual practice, suggest prayer or meditation, rather than offering you love and care and emotional and practical support. They may berate you for making small mistakes or not living up to exacting moral standards, leaving you feeling guilty and ashamed. Your feelings often reflect the deep-rooted shame that this person feels, but that's of very little comfort when you're starting to wonder if you really are as weak and contemptible as their criticism of you would suggest. The next form of spiritual bypassing I'm going to talk about can result in serious emotional abuse and damage, and that's disguising controlling behaviors as obedience to God. It is one thing for a partner to try to control you, tell you what to do, what to wear, who you can and can't spend time with, where you can and cannot go. But what if they claim divine authority for their control? What if they claim that God is speaking to them, or that they've attained a higher level of spirituality than you? Not conforming to their demands isn't just defying them, it's defying God. This manipulation can become even more insidious when it's carried out by trusted leaders in faith or spiritual communities. Such leaders are often put on a pedestal, and no one would imagine that they are being abusive or cruel to someone close to them. This can exert an incredible collective pressure on you. It becomes very hard to think for yourself, to feel your own emotions, especially if you might want to say something negative or express a difficult feeling towards the person who's controlling you. It becomes harder to think for yourself, to make your own decisions about what's important in your life, and it can be very isolating to be in that position where everyone around you thinks the person who's controlling you is spiritually superior or someone to look up to. The weight of this control can be overbearing, especially if your spirituality or faith is important to you, because going against this controlling person can also feel like you're turning your back on your faith itself. Another form of spiritual bypassing that can often go along with this is the use of spirituality as a form of narcissistic grandiosity. People who are very high in pathological narcissism can use spirituality as a way to gain a sense of superiority. They might believe that they have a higher perspective or feel morally and spiritually superior to other people. Someone who is grandiose in this way can take dismissive and hurtful and even abusive behaviours and frame them as being spiritual or enlightened. And the air of superiority can leave you feeling inferior, doubting and questioning yourself in ways that are not conducive to a good relationship with yourself, a good relationship with them, or even healthy spirituality. These behaviours can look quite different depending on the spiritual, religious, or cultural tradition that someone comes from. Whatever the specifics, spiritual bypassing is about using spirituality to avoid emotional honesty, to avoid dealing with your own issues or interpersonal conflicts or the challenges of life. It may allow you to tackle low self-esteem by feeling spiritually superior to other people. Instead of building compassion, connection, and facilitating personal growth, spiritual practices are used as a tool for avoidance and sometimes criticism. Spiritual abuse takes this even further, where someone uses spirituality to reject you, to put you down, to criticize you, to isolate you, to control you, to restrict your freedoms. This can be devastating, especially when it occurs within a spiritual community that you feel a part of. It can rob you of being able to use your own spirituality as a resource and strip you of the supportive community that you need. The good news is that you can reclaim spirituality and use it as a resource for healing and connection. Spiritual abuse often involves emotional abuse and coercive control, and it is no less abusive for being spiritual. So if you are experiencing it, do reach out to organizations in your area who can help people experiencing domestic abuse. In addition to professional support, friends, family, and trusted members of your faith or spiritual community can be a valuable source of support. They can help you to gain valuable perspective and put you back in control of your mind and heart so you can wisely evaluate what your next steps might be. However, if your faith community is abusive or controlling or in the thrall of the person who's abusing you, I'd encourage you to have the courage to reach beyond it. Confiding in friends or professionals from outside your spiritual community can provide valuable perspective and much needed support. Now, this can be incredibly difficult, especially if your faith is very important to you, because reaching beyond your faith community can sometimes feel like a betrayal. You may even have been taught that seeking advice from outsiders is wrong, or you may fear that they won't understand or that they will judge you. But remember, isolating you from outside support is exactly how abusive people and abusive institutions exercise control. Reaching out is not betrayal. It's a courageous step to find the clarity and the support that you need. Now, I don't want you to get the impression that spirituality is all bad or that spiritual traditions can't hold a lot of wisdom that may help guide you towards more loving, kinder, and more peaceful relationships. If that is something that interests you, check out this video right here.